We'll do a quick summary. We are learning first chapter, verse 46. Okay? Or 44. But I'll just go back a little bit and give a... you have it? 44. Anybody have it? It's good if someone has the translation. 44. Kamat monim. Good, good. So I'll just go back a little bit. You guys ready? So we said the king, the non-Jewish king of Kuzari meets the rabbi, and they have a discussion. At first he tells him, I believe in tell me about your faith. I believe in the God of Avram, Yitzchak, and Israel, who took them out of Egypt and all the miracles they went through and everything, and receiving the Torah and so on. And the king says, okay, so the Torah is only for you. Where is the whole world? And then he says, you have to let me explain some foundations. I need to give you some backup. We have to back up. Let me give you some foundational explanations of things that will help you understand it. Parables. And he gives him a parable of the king of India. Imagine there was a king somewhere. Everyone remembers the story. Yes, you all remember the story of the king of India. And the king, and is there a king or isn't there a king? But once the king sends me a letter and gives me gifts, and I see the impact and the revolution that happens in my life, I know now there's a king, and I know that that it's a real thing. It changed my life, and I came in contact with it firsthand through the experience of what I received from the king, the gifts, and through the servants of the king, who I met firsthand, and I have a letter from the king, so I can read the letter. I have a connection with the king, and so on. The next thing explains, okay, now let me explain to you through nature, to try to explain what is Am Yisrael, because then he mentioned this one word that was kind of really shocking to the king, and this word took the king for a ride, because the king understood, okay, so God needed a nation, and he chose a nation. He did eeny, meeny, miny, mo, or he, for whatever reason, he found the Jewish people, and he chose the nation of Israel, and he chose the nation. And theoretically, if that's the reason why he chose us and how he chose us, so he can also replace us. Another nation, he needed a nation, so he could take any nation. So when the Kuzari mentioned this word called Anusgula Mibnei Adam, the Jewish people are called a Sgula. What is a Sgula? What is this? Now the Kuzari, the king, is going to go explain the concept of Sgula. How do I explain what Sgula is? It's an inherent value. It's a new creation. The same way you have, and he explains it through the natural world that we know. We know that plants have a Sgula that stones don't have. What's the Sgula that plant? What does the word Sgula mean? An inherent value, a something that is unique, a unique value that and he's showing him in the world to explain what is the Sgula, that Hashem didn't just choose Am Yisrael because he needed a nation, but we are the nation that holds this Sgula, this inherent value, the same way the plant holds the value of growth, development. Stones don't develop, don't grow, but plants have a Sgula where they reproduce, they grow. So it's something that is called Sgula, is a value, an inherent value of something new. The plant is something new compared to the stone. And then the animal. The animal has a Sgula that it has a personality. Right? There's no personality in plants. You go, you cut down all the plants and with the machine, and there's no issue. But an animal has a nefesh. It has emotions. It has right. It's a new sgula. It's a new level of existence that is not a plant. And then human beings have the sgula that they have a sechel. They have an intellect, and therefore and they speak and they think, and therefore you expect from a human being to build to develop his character, to build a family, and to build a country, and to make laws and rules on how to run the state. These are levels from the individual to the family to the collective to the these are expectations. So then the king asks the rabbi asked the king, and what would be above a human being? So he says, I guess, a very smart person, a genius. And he says, no, a genius is not any different than a person who's a fool. Like the same way, a wood table. What's a table? A piece of wood with 4 wood legs. And what about a stone table with 3 legs? It's also a table. That's not a change. This is a person that maximized his ability, his sechel, as a human being, and that's a person who didn't. But it's not a change of a sgula. It's not a new sgula. So he says there isn't something like that. There isn't a sgula. There is nothing above a human being. There's 4 levels of existence, of creation, and that's it. Comes the king and says, the rabbi, and says there's a fifth level of creation. If I would tell you there's a person who could not eat, not drink, can walk into fire, can walk into fire, can eat, doesn't have to eat or drink, and when he wants to die, he dies at the time that he chooses. The laws of nature don't apply to him. When he wants to die, he says, I'm going to die, and he lies down in the bed like he's going to sleep, and he knows the past and the future. Would you agree that's a new level? The king says that's not human. That would be like godly or like an angel or something. Doesn't exist. If it exists, it doesn't exist. But if it does, I would say it's godly. It's not a human. Definitely not human. And that's the Jewish people. Moshe Rabbeinu, that example that he brings of Moshe Rabbeinu is us. Moshe Rabbeinu is the mirror of the Jewish people. Okay, the Jewish people as a nation, the laws of nature don't apply to us. Like the story of the king with the gifts. If I would give you a gift of something that could destroy, if I would give you a gift of something if I would give you a gift of a, thank you. If I could give you a gift of something that could destroy the enemies without using any weapons and could keep you healthy without, right? If I would give you medications that keep you healthy, you never become sick, you never become weak, and it heals you and your whole nation, and you destroy your enemy, would you now believe that there's a king there that's real? Yes. What's that medication? That's the Jewish people. We live forever. Every nation. It's like a cycle of a person that lives and dies. Nations come, nations go. The Jewish nation, since it appeared, is eternal. So Moshe Rabbeinu is in a how do you say, microcosm, or in a, right? At one example of a person, it's the mirror of seeing what is the Jewish people and what you could potentially reach. He is the what we call the prototype, the model that was tested and reached its highest potential. Now, so the king is like, wow, pretty shocked. And what does he ask next? And he says, this is our prophet. This is our prophet, Moshe Rabbeinu, that there is nobody disagrees. Asher en alav cholek. I'm reading now 43. There's nobody disagrees that Moshe Rabbeinu existed and reached these levels we're telling you about. Why? Everyone saw that God is revealed on this person. And he told them the past. He told them, the Jewish people, this person, Moshe Rabbeinu, he told us the past. He told us, first of all, how the world was created from nothing, which is very important to know. We said the idea that the world was created from nothing to something, according to the Ramban, that is the foundation of Judaism. If you don't believe that God created the world something from nothing, you don't believe in God. The concept, and why is that so important? Because it makes a very clear distinction between the creator and the created. We cannot create anything. We don't mix between, we understand that we are created. We have humility. We know we're human beings. We know we're limited. We can't create. God is the creator. We are the created. And that makes us understand our place. What's the big problem with Christianity? Is they mixed up that the creator, created, is the creator. They actually call a person that he's God. And that's what the Ramban writes. And I'm reading to you. It's very important that the Torah starts with Bereshit. Why? Ki shoresh ha'emunah. Hu shoresh ha'emunah. The idea that God created the world. It's very important. Also, when we left Egypt, we experienced two things, two revelations, as we were walking through the ocean. What did we see? Et hayad ha'chazaka ve'azroa netuya. What does that mean? The strong hand and the outstretched arm. What does that mean? What are those two concepts? Strong hand means we saw that God created the world. It was clear to us, we knew it. But what is the zroa netuya? The outstretched arm. So let's say I have a piece of wood here, and I want to now cut the wood in half. I lift my arm up because I want something to happen. I want to now put my hand down and have something take place. We saw that God not only created the world, which is a very important revelation, and that's what we're going to talk about now, the creation of the world. But we saw that he not only created the world, he has a mission and a goal that he wants the world to reach. It's not just, okay, created the world, do whatever you want. No, I created the world for a purpose, and that's what we say, that's the importance of God creating the world. He created it because he wanted it here. Why did he want it? He wanted something to happen here. We're going to talk about that. But the Ramban says that is tzorach gadol. It's very important to Torah to start with Bereshit. Ki hu shoresh ha'emunah. That's the root of faith. Whoever doesn't believe this and thinks the world always existed, like the philosophers, they say the world always existed and God always existed. And the world developed through a process of what we call, what's it called? What's Darwinism? What's that called? Evolution. So everything evolved and expanded, but the world always existed and God always existed. And that's a very important distinction, that the world didn't always exist. Who kofer bikar ve'en lo Torah klal. This the Ramban writes. A person who doesn't believe the world was created is a person that is kofer, is disbeliever, and he has no Torah. So that's a very important foundation. So very important that's what we're going to talk about, the creation of the world right now. But it's very interesting that, so now he says, okay, so he says, if this existed, then I would say it's not a person, it's either an angel or something godly. And he says, yes, these are, what I'm telling you is a few descriptions of our prophet. I'm reading 43. And nobody disagrees with him. Okay, he told them the hidden things. He told them that the world was created. we wouldn't have known. Moshe Rabbeinu told us the world was created. Veyachas bnei Adam kodem mabo, and all of the people, all of the lineage, all of the history from the Mabul, from the flood, from before the flood, and now everybody is called back to the first person. Okay, Adam. How everyone comes from Adam. Ve'ech haya Mabul, and how the flood came about. Ve'yachas shivim umot el Shem Cham ve'Yafet, and how the 70 nations come from the children of Noach, Shem, Cham, and Yafet, and how the languages were created, where they lived, and how the countries and states were created, and the years from Adam until now. Now this is very important. Where are we as far as the years that we count? We're 5,784. Okay, it's a very important number, and it's incredible. I mean, look at this, the book we have here. What an incredible gift. So, we talked about a lot of things about Moshe Rabbeinu. That he doesn't eat and doesn't sleep, that he walks into fire, that he's a new level. On every level, that Moshe Rabbeinu is something. He's not a stone. Stones you can burn, right? Everything burns with fire. He's like a new level. He's not a plant. Plants, they need to eat to live. They need to grow. What happens when a plant doesn't eat? It wilts and gets weak. What happens to Moshe Rabbeinu when he doesn't eat or drink? His face beams so hard that you can't look at it. You have to put a light on it. You have to put a mask. Moshe Rabbeinu, he didn't eat for 40 days, 40 nights, and his face was beaming light. So where is he getting his energy from? Where is this coming from? So he's not a human. He's not like on the plant level. He's not on the animal level. He doesn't get sick. He doesn't get weak. Animals get sick, get weak, get old. Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't get sick, doesn't get weak. It says till the end of his days, lo nas lecho v'lo tash kocho. He was in his full strength. He was very strong. They talk about Moshe Rabbeinu. First of all, he lifted the 10 Commandments. It was a big stone. Secondly, it says he lifted the Mishkan by himself. Like you're talking about, he was like all those movies, all those pictures of Michelangelo where you see Moshe Rabbeinu with muscles. It's true. He was very, very strong, and he didn't weaken at all. And this is the Jewish people. So he's not a plant. He's not a human, because humans know the present, but he knows the past, and he knows the future. And he told us everything that happened, from how the world was created from nothing, and the lineage and the languages and the countries. So why is the Kuzari now going to go in to talk about, and the king, from all of the things we just mentioned, the king asks the question, what, you know? You have a calculation from the creation of the world? When do you calculate from?
One second. I said he's not human. He is human.
So we're not different. The Jewish people are not different in the body, but we have a different soul. Right? So as bodies, yeah, we look like we're regular humans. But the Jewish people have something that they're not human. It's a godly angel. Isha Elokim. Moshe Rabbeinu was Isha Elokim, and we are the nation of the godly nation. This is who we are. We've had millions of prophets. So Moshe Rabbeinu reached to the highest level, but it says that when we came out of Egypt, we came to Israel, Kiflaim keyotze Mitzrayim. Double the amount were prophets. So we had like 1.5 million prophets. Prophecy is something where we don't even know what prophecy is. Yes.
You say prophets, right? But what exactly does that mean? Right? Because everyone received the nevuah at Yam Suf, right?
Everyone received it on Yam Suf and Har Sinai. So it says that even the maid servant. No, but there's a difference. It says Ra'ata shifcha alayam. Later on, we're going to talk about prophecy in the book, but we're not on a side note. Ra'ata shifcha alayam, masher lo ra'a Yechezkel ben Buzi machazeh nevuah. The simple maidservant on crossing through the ocean, she saw a revelation of God, a prophecy, that even the prophet Yechezkel didn't have on his highest level of prophecy. What's the difference? He was still a prophet all the time, but she had this one moment where everyone was lifted up, but wasn't from your own effort and your own. A prophet was something you worked on. You like today, the highest level we have is Ruach HaKodesh. Ruach HaKodesh. It's like the Ruach, the wind blows you from inside. Like you go to do the will of God from inside, but it's not God talking to you. A prophet is a receiver. Is a receiver for the word of God, that God communicates with you. It's something you can't even imagine. The highest level we can think today is Ruach HaKodesh, and there are rabbis have reached Ruach HaKodesh. But there's one level above that. As long as we don't have prophecy, we're sick. Not ourselves. It's something that in the past you had to either have prophecy or be connected to a prophet and receive the prophecy through him. But it's something that we're lacking. We are made to be prophets. We're the children of prophets, and that's what we're built for. It's like a plane. A plane needs to fly. You could use a plane to drive to the store to buy milk, theoretically, right? But that's not what it's built for. So we're not yet. Now, the nations of the world, a bicycle, it will never become an airplane. It's complicated. It's a whole nother world. But a fighter jet is a fighter jet. That's ultimately what we are. We haven't yet tapped into our full potential, but in the past we have. And Moshe Rabbeinu is the example of that person. So he says, when do you count? You have a calculation? From when do you count? After we mentioned the greatness of Moshe Rabbeinu, that he knew things from the past and the future and everything else. So he says, so how do you count? How do you calculate your years? Basically what we're doing now is, from all the things we spoke of Moshe Rabbeinu, what are we going to talk about? Moshe Rabbeinu being a historian. Moshe Rabbeinu, the historian. Every historian, based on his belief in life, is going to write the history based on his belief, based on his world of understanding. If I'm a historian for art, so I'll say there's before this artist and there's after this artist, and based on that I can see the art and I'll tell you what it's built from, what area it's part of. This was the end of this type of art and now it's this kind of art. We need to now that we mentioned that the Jewish people have stepped on what we call the stage of history. Now we need to rewrite all of history, because everything now is different. For example, when I say in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. Okay, the next day then God created 3 days later he created the birds and the fish. Oh, now I understand why there's water and there's this heavens, because the birds need to be in the heavens and the water and the fish need to be in the earth. So I need to now explain everything based on the new understanding. Everything was created for the fish and the for the fish and the animals. Sorry, the fish and the birds. And then human beings were created. Oh, so wait, so all of creation was built for that. I have to explain everything. I have to go back and explain everything again. Why? Like, how does it fit in with this new understanding of the new understanding of the human beings that were created? And now that I'm telling you that the Jewish nation was created, I have to look back now on all of history and see everything brought to this moment, for this importance of this creation of this nation. How do I now explain all of history? The answer is that's what Moshe Rabbeinu did as a historian. So he says, what do you calculate? How do you calculate the world? So he says, and this is incredible, he says, we have a calculation. Not only we have a calculation, ve'en ben hayudim baze machloket b'hodu v'dad kush. There is no argument with any Jew from Hodu and Kush, from one side of the world to the other side of the world. There is no disagreement on this is the calculation. What is the calculation? How many do you count? We count 5,000. So here he says 1,400 years. Sorry, 4,500 years. And remember, this story is based on a true story of a king that spoke to a rabbi. That happened in year 4,500. This is 400 years later when the book was actually written, based on the true story, as they say. So we count 4,500 years. And this starts from Adam, Shet, and Enosh until Noach, Shem, Cham, and Ever, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, until Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, why is it important? There's no discussion here about how old the world is. We all know, or we agree, the world is billions of years old. You can go and look in caves in France. There's caves where you have cavemen colored, monkeys, horses and people with spears. And there's Midrash that says, Rav Kook brings a Midrash that says that there was human beings before Adam Arishon. The only thing that interests us and Moshe Rabbeinu information he gave us was the word history. What is the word history? This is the way the Rav Kook used to write history. Historia. What does this make? Two words. Hester, ya. Okay? No, didn't do too good. What does that mean? Hester, historia. So this is what interests us. Our history, the history of the revelation of God in the world. The first person to have a revelation with God was Adam Arishon. That's the first person that God communicated with, and he had the Segula. So now we're going to explain the Jewish people, the Jewish nation, didn't come out of a vacuum. We are connected to the world. It was not out of nowhere, popped up. No. Let me explain to you. There's roots. There were people who had something special, who had this gula. It was in individuals. Adam Arishon was the first person 5,784 years ago. That is when everything began. Okay? And Adam Arishon, and we learned this incredible concept from here that he had children, Adam Arishon. We said Shet, but some children were like klipot, were like the wrapper, were like the shell, and other people were not like the parents, and it may skip generations. This gula, this light, the torch. Who held this torch? Who had this light? There were some that were like the fruit, and some were like the peel. And God's the godliness did not connect with them. And it was always individuals. Adam Arishon had it first, and then it went down to Shet, his third son, right? After Cain killed Hevel, they had a third son called Shet, and Shet was the one that held the torch. And then it went down to Enosh, and Noach, and Shem, and Ever, and then it went to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and then the revolution happened. What was the revolution? Until Yaakov came and had 12 tribes. And this was the first time that in a family, everybody was a fruit. And that was why the big fights between Yosef and Yaakov and the brothers, why were the fights so big? Because it was always somebody was the fruit and somebody was the peel. Somebody was pushed out, was not meant to be holding the torch, and other ones were. And when they saw Yosef, who was different than them, they were sure it's either he's out or we're out. It better be him, because if it's not him, then we're out. Because there was no way for them to understand that there's such a thing that in a family the torch could be held by the whole family. But they didn't know there was this was a development. And development was that now it was no longer with individuals holding the torch, it was the family. Everyone was in the fold. Everybody was holding on to this gula, to this unique inherent value. Kulam ra'uim le'yan Elohi, v'shava Elohut v'kal rav, and b'zeh haya minyan. And now it went, and from there it went into the whole nation. Now kibanu minyan shnei hakadmim, Moshe v'nedam sheyesh Moshe adada, and we got it from Moshe Rabbeinu. And now we see, and that's what word says, Atem korim Adam. You, the Jewish people, are called Bnei Adam, the children of Adam. You are the ones carrying this torch that's been handed down of the godly inyan Elohi, the godly interest, and the people that are basically holding the torch. Okay? And obviously, the names that Moshe Rabbeinu brought us, it says Vayildu Banim, and they had children, but they're not relevant. Moshe Rabbeinu told us the revelation of the hiddenness of God that's revealed. It started with Adam. So when we count 5,784, we're counting from the birth of Adam Arishon. And we're rewriting history, explaining how everything was built up to bring the Jewish nation in. And this is the way, and what does that mean? Inyan Elohi, v'shachanti, God dwells in this nation. V'asuri mikdash shachanti betocham. Create me a temple and I would dwell in them. It should say I'll dwell in it. No, God dwells. The revelation of God in the world is through a nation. Okay. And what about the nations of the world? They're also created in God's image, yes, but God dwells in the Jewish nation more than everyone else. Every nation has a talent, and our talent is this connection with God. The Shechina, v'shachanti betocham, to be the vessel for the revelation of God in the world. That's who we are. And therefore, we're only counting according to the revelation of God in the world. That's what interests us. And that is very important. And then with Yaakov Avinu, this is the revolution that took place. And it's no longer God is dwelling on individuals. God is now dwelling on a nation. That's the first time we come in contact with this idea of a community, of a tzibur, of a group. It's no longer a family, right? And this family will be the nation. And this is a huge revolution. Okay? And you have to remember that the Chazal tell us from Elyon Navi, Me'id alai, I bring the heaven and the earth as my witnesses, says Elyon Navi. That whether it's a Jew or a non-Jew, a man or a woman, a slave or a maidservant, Hakol lefi ma'asav ruach hakodesh alav. It's all about your actions. And you can have ruach hakodesh as an individual. Just because there's a Jewish nation and there's this new creation, does that mean that the personal effort of human beings is gone? No. Anybody could have ruach hakodesh as an individual. But this idea of a holy nation, kedushat haklal, this is something that does not exist in the world besides the Jewish nation. Okay? And it's all about, that's the whole Torah talks about. I will create you a great nation. And over and over and over again. And it's complicated. A nation is very complicated. And now the king says, Hamara Kuzari. And we're reading in 48. What you just gave me now is a very powerful proof. It completely takes away any disbelief I may have had. This is a powerful. What you just told me now is very powerful. You're telling me that the proof of the Jewish people is something that you can identify clearly from Adam Arishon, 4,500 years or 5,784 years, and it's something that every Jew agrees on. So it can't be that if it's a lie, you have 10 people and someone makes a lie, everybody will say something else or disagree. How could it be? You're saying every Jew agrees on this calculation of the calendar back to Adam and the explanation of the nations that it's all correct. This is powerful. The king says, wow, this is like, this pushes away, you know what I'm saying, there's cross references of historical books, right? Or ידחו דברי מי שירצה לברר אצלם דבר כזה, כל שכן המונים רבים. It can't be, when it comes to historical facts, it can't be that everybody will agree on it, and במניין קרוב אין כזב, right? שקר יכול להיכנס אליו. He says, wow, this is incredible, I can't believe it. You're not telling me some vague proofs or things, you're telling me actual historical facts, and it's so precise and so exact of the languages and where they lived and what they and the families and everything else. This means it must be real what you're telling me, right? And like somebody can't come and say Napoleon never existed. What do you mean? There's so many different cross references for books that were written in those times that they talk about Napoleon from here and he talks about Napoleon from the other side of the world. So okay, I understand that's real. This is something, he says, you can't lie. You can't lie on historical facts that can be cross-examined through other proofs. So everything Moshe Rabbeinu said was true, right? We know, right? We know who was Adam Arishon. He was a godly person. Ish Elohi. We don't understand the high level he was on, but he was a godly person. So the question is, why don't we really calculate from when we came out of Egypt? Like, like other religions, Muslims, they count from Muhammad. Christians count from Yeshki, right? Why don't we count from when we came out of Egypt? Why do we count from the creation of the world, or creation of Adam Arishon, of all mankind that we know from, that we have a connection with, the godly mankind? The answer is because we really are universal. We're universal. We want it to be good for all of mankind. We end our prayers every day. Aleinu shabeach danakol. That should be good for all. We want to fix the world. We want it to be good for the world. But everything starts from the heart of the world. And what's the heart of the world? Knesset Yisrael, the Jewish nation. We really want to uplift everybody and everything. We're not just this individual, segregated nation. We're connected to everybody. We love everybody. We're concerned about everybody in the world. We're part of the world. We're the heart of the world. And we're the heart. We're not a foot. We're not a hand. We're not an ear. We are the heart. And Kuzari is going to talk about it in the second chapter, how we are the heart of the world. Now the king is like shocked about this incredible, precise, historical facts of the how do you say, calculation of the years, and he says, "Wow, this can't be fooled. This is real, right? This is a really powerful proof." But the king says, the rabbi says to him, "You don't understand. We're talking about something else. We're talking about not just okay, you proved to me it's facts. No, we're talking about the revelation that we had with God, that it lives within us. The revelation of Har Sinai, all these things. This is not just proof that I could say, okay, I believe it, it's true, because we lived everything of Avram and Yaakov. We live it. The Matan Torah. This is a whole story. And again, the calculation that we count is the calculation of God's revelation in the world through the main funnel, which is the Jewish nation. And Okay, so then Amar Chaver, the rabbi says, so the king says, wow, this is incredible. He says, yeah, let me just make it even more. Let me even more explain to you the how powerful this is. Amar Chaver, aval Avraham Avinu atzmo haya b'dor hapalaga. Avram Avinu lived in the generation of the separation of the nations. We all know how it happened. V'nisharu kova b'lishon ever aviv u'lezeh nikra ivri. Why was Avram Avinu called Ivri? The word Ivri means to be the other side of the world. So, from the creation of the world, from Adam Arishon, now Avram Avinu, the whole world spoke Hebrew. That was the international language. And then what happened? They built the Tower of Babel. Not Babylon. Yes, Tower of Babylon it's called, or Tower of Babel, Migdal Babel. They wanted to go, and who knows what they wanted to do there, fight against God. And God created, he made the 70 languages. Everyone was united. They wanted to basically detach themselves from God. So the 70 nations that chose to distance themselves from the godly, what we call Inyan Elohi, the godly connection. But Avram Avinu held on to the original language. And he held on to the original language of his grandfather, of Ever, and which is, and this is the original language that comes from. And now we're explaining the whole idea of nations. So the whole idea of nations happened, but it seems like it was a malfunction. They're coming against God, they're creating nations, but no, even though it seems that it came out in a roundabout negative way, b'diavad, like it shouldn't have been, and because they came against God, but really it's something that needed to be. It was the beginning of this was something that seemed bad, was actually, it was a good thing that nations separated. And it's actually something that is an ideal. And sometimes things happen in a negative way, but it was something positive. And that's what the positive thing that happened was the creation of nations. And it says, Elyon goyim, be'adam, yatsav gvurot amim le'mispar bnei Yisrael. In order for the Jewish nation to be created, there had to be nations. And now the Jewish nation comes out of it. Every nation has a revelation of the image of God that is special. But Avram Avinu held the torch. He is the original Ivri. And it says the whole world is on one side. What Ivri means to be on the other side of the river is that the whole world is on one side of the river and everyone else on the other side. And then Moshe Rabbeinu came 400 years later. And now this is important to know. So the king is saying, so that now the rabbi is explaining to the king, I'm going to make it even more clear to you, the faith. And by the way, what's the difference between tikkun midot and musar? Sorry, musar and learning emunah. Like we learned Mesiyat Yesharim is called musar. And then you have emunah. So tikkun midot is to develop your character, is to fix your character. And emunah is to fix your thoughts. Tikkun hamachshavot, to fix your thoughts, to think in the right way, to be clear understanding of godliness. So Moshe Rabbeinu, so now he's strengthening he's saying, you're blown away by this calculation? Let me tell you something incredible. It's very important. You think that the people accepted what Moshe Rabbeinu said as a fact because they were idiots? Let me explain something. The world then was very, very, very smart. Moshe Rabbeinu came 400 years after Avram Avinu. And the world was full of chokhmat shamayim va'aretz. The world was full of wisdom beyond. You know what kind of wisdom they had to have to build the what are they called? The pyramids. It's a wisdom that nobody understands how they did it. Do you know what kind of wisdom you need to have to embalm people? They were very wise people. And Moshe Rabbeinu came 400 years after Avram Avinu, and the world was full of wisdom from heaven and earth. And he came to the wise people of Paro, the superpower of the world, and they were very, very wise. V'chachmei bnei Israel, and the wisest people of Israel. Chokrim alav al asher lo iminu lo b'emunah shlema ki borah medaber me'adam. When Moshe Rabbeinu came and said, God spoke to me and said, let my people go, they didn't believe it. Paro's wise people, I know we like to think that they're all primitive pagan people that were idiots. These were very wise, smart people. And they did not believe in Moshe Rabbeinu until they heard themselves the Ten Commandments, God speaking to Moshe Rabbeinu and God speaking to us. Only then would we actually believe that there's such a thing, that God speaks to a human being, that God communicates with the Creator communicates with His creations. The nation of Israel, the people of Israel, hayu imo, they were with Him, they believed in Him, not because they were idiots. They were so wise. They knew there was magic and there was tricks, and they didn't believe in Him. They questioned Him, even though they were with Him, even though, not because of any of the 10 plagues that He did, not because of splitting of the sea. They always questioned Him. None of the miracles were what convinced them. Okay? And He says, you think that, but when they heard the 10 Commandments, that was it. All of their questions, all of their doubts were gone. And do you think that somebody could lie? Moshe Rabbeinu could have lied about something. We know for a fact that you cannot lie about something that's 500 years old. And at least for the first 500 years, nothing could be a lie, because you had books from all over. They had writings. So how could he have lied about anything? He's talking about nations, the name of the nations, their children, and what they did, and where they lived, and what happened, right? And everything that happened with Niflaga, Bavel, and the nations, V'yachas umot kar Hashem. Okay, okay. The king says, I agree, it cannot be. He's like, you agree? I agree. מי שהיה 500 שנה לא יעבור כזב ונגלות כמו היחסים בשונות והכתיבות. ואיך לא חולקים על משה במה שאמר והיו עמו טובים אותו וכל שזה. So he says, yeah, they would have questioned him, and this is a proof and a fact that it's real. He says, everything you're saying is דברים מקובלים, everything you're saying till now is very acceptable, חזקים, powerful, ומיוסדים, and very, how do you say, established, with proofs and facts. Amazing. Now the king is going to go and talk about 3 new concepts. If we just said that the world goes back to Adam and that the original language was Hebrew, so now we're going to find that there are 3 new proofs that there was a unity, there was a oneness that was together, and then it spread. What are the proof for that? 3 things. The number 7, that we count the weekday 7. The number 10, that we count. The number 10 is very significant in the 10 plagues, the 10 commandments, the 10, right? Meiser is 10, that we count the number 10, that we base everything on 10. This shows there's a hint that there's a remnants of this unity, a remnants of this that we all come from one, and it was then we became scattered, but that you can see in the languages. So do you see now, these 3 things show that the proof of that the world comes from this unity. We have 5 more minutes. It comes from unity, and then we see how they spread out. But these 3 things, the languages, the weekdays, the counting 7, and the 10, counting 10, this shows that there is a root that's united, that unites all of humanity. And these are connected to how we count and live in the world. אמר חבר, אתה רואה שעל שונות קדומות אין להם תחילה. So he says, do you think that would you be able to say how languages were developed? That did they start at a certain time, or did man create languages? So the rabbi asks the king, how do you think languages came about? Okay. So he says, אבל הם חדשות, מוסכם עליהם, מורה על חיבור מן השמות והפועלים והמילות, והם מן האותיות ממוצאי הדיבור. So the rabbi asked him, do you think languages are how do you say, prehistoric? That they were always there? Or do they have a beginning? And the king says, I think that languages just happened. I think they just happened. That there was like an agreement, and how do we know that? That because each language is a combination of something that is unique. It doesn't make sense, right? But he says, I think that it makes sense that it's clear that there was once no language and suddenly there became a language, which brings us back to the fact of, we talk about Migdal Bavel, then the language could develop and new words could come in, but the beginning of languages, Amar Chaver, Haraita Bodeh Lashon Libo O Shamata Alav. Did you ever hear of a person that woke up one day and said, I want to make a new language? Right? Did you ever hear in all of your history or anything you learned, and the king was a very wise person, did you ever hear the idea of a language being something that somebody decided to invent a language and it just happened? Or no, it's actually something where the nation created this language. אמר כוזרי, לא ראיתי ולא שמעתי, אין ספק שהגיעו אליה בדור מהדורות, לא הייתה קודם הלשון שהסכימו עליה, מהסכמת עם מבלי עם הלשון מבלתי לשון. So he says, yes, the idea of a language comes to get us used to a new concept called a nation. Nations created languages. And we talk about Bavel, that's when it happened. Suddenly each nation had a new language. So it's something that just happened, right? So the king is taking it back. The Kuzari is taking back what he said. I take it back. It's not that people agreed on something and like a professor sat around and they said, okay, let's call this a book, and let's call this a table, and let's call this. It didn't work that way. It happened it grew from within the nation, and it wasn't because of any decision. It wasn't because it was like an instinctive sense of the nation, and this is how the language began. Okay? Now, of course, there are words that come in Judaism, words that came in from other countries, right? Like Sanhedrin comes from Greek, but it's rare. Most of the language, Sfat HaKodesh, or the language we speak, it comes from God. Of course, you can convert words as well, but in general, we have our language. The language is very important. So we see that a language is not something that is developed, but it's on the border of godly, human, right? They agreed on something together, and it just happened, and therefore, Amar Chaver. And now we go into we have to end. But next class we'll talk about the weekdays, and then the number 10, and how these are proofs of leftover hints to the fact that the world was united in unity, and they all come from Adam Arishon, and that we all come from the languages that we said, the weekday that we count, and the number 10 that we count 10. So we'll continue next time to go into depth. Thank you, guys.